All right, so Ray Kurzweil. Right, big predictions. Huge, actually. And his 2024 book, The Singularity is Nearer, gets right to the point, doesn't it?
It does. Not shying away from much, is he?
Not at all. Inventor, futurist, author. Kurzweil's looking at the future of, well, us.
Yeah.
Humanity. And let me tell you, he says things are about to get interesting.
Interesting might be understating it a tad. We can be talking a whole new meaning to being human before we know it.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Where do we even start with all of this?
Kurzweil, he starts with this idea of exponential growth. We're used to things improving slowly, right? Year after year, bit by bit. But he's like, nope, forget that.
Really?
Gone. It's more like, think of a snowball rolling downhill, faster and faster, bigger and bigger every second. That's what's happening with computing, data, AI, the whole picture.
Yeah. So it's not just that things are changing, it's the speed. That's what's different this time.
Exactly. He calls it the law of accelerating returns, LAR, if you want to be fancy. And he says it's not just some theory. It's playing out right now everywhere we look. Like, think about the printing press, right?
Revolutionized everything.
Totally. But then look how fast things changed after. Moore's law, transistors doubling on a chip like clockwork. Boom. Broadband internet. Explodes.
And all of a sudden, that smartphone
Right?
that you're probably listening to this on, that little thing is more powerful than an entire room-sized supercomputer from a few decades ago.
Blows your mind, right?
It's almost impossible to grasp. Back then, that kind of power in your pocket, pure science fiction.
Exactly. And that's Kurzweil's point. We underestimate this exponential thing every single time.
Okay, so things are changing fast and getting faster. But where does AI fit into this whole picture? It seems like it's everywhere we turn these days.
AI, well, that's where it gets really wild. Remember AlphaGo Zero? The AI that taught itself to play Go?
Yeah. Beat the top players in the world.
But hold on, it taught itself? No one programmed it with strategies or anything?
Nope. Played against itself. Millions, billions of times. And then went up against the world champion. Crushed him.
Okay, that's impressive. I'll give you that. But what does it actually tell us? I mean, it's a game, right? Beating a human at a board game.
It's not about the game. It's that this AI taught itself something incredibly complex with zero human help. That's a game changer. Kurzweil says this is just the beginning. AI solving problems everywhere, not just games, every field.
So we're talking AI doctors, engineers, AI podcast hosts? Maybe. Think bigger, though. Kurzweil talks about AI like this thing called CLIP. It's learning to connect images and text, just like our brains do.
CLIP, how does that even work?
So imagine you show CLIP a picture, let's say a cat, riding a Roomba. It not only sees the cat, sees the Roomba, it gets the relationship between them, the humor. It's learning concepts, not just labels.
Okay, that's wild.
Oh, and get this, there's an AI, Paul M. It's actually learning to understand and tell jokes.
Jokes! Wait, are you telling me AI could get humor? I thought that was like a human thing.
$1 million question, right? And that's where things get really interesting. What does AI understanding something actually mean? Does it have to be, conscious for that?
You're blowing my mind here. Okay, so AI is getting smarter, faster than we can imagine. But where does it go from there? What's next in Kurzweil's big vision of the future? This is where I imagine it really goes from interesting to, whoa.
Oh, we're just getting started. AI understanding jokes is just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Yeah.
Kurzweil takes this whole accelerating progress thing even further, like light speed further, especially when he starts talking nanobots.
Nanobots. Okay, I think we've officially crossed over into sci-fi territory now. We're talking tiny robots, right? Like in our bloodstreams, fighting diseases and stuff.
That's the basic idea. But Kurzweil takes it up a notch, or 10. Think microscopic robots, smaller than cells even, operating at the molecular level. He's predicting that by maybe the 2030s, these nanobots could connect our neocortex, that's the thinking part of our brains, directly to the cloud.
To the cloud. Wait, like the same cloud where I store all my photos and files, I'm going to be brain linked to Google Drive.
Think way bigger than Google Drive. Imagine having all of human knowledge instantly accessible. Google searches, Wikipedia, everything, all happening inside your head.
Okay, at that point, it's more than just remembering where you left your keys. It's like becoming a walking, talking encyclopedia. But beyond just information overload, what would that even feel like? Would we still be thinking the way we do now?
That's the really wild part. Kurzweil thinks it wouldn't just make us smarter, it would fundamentally change how we experience, reality. Learning wouldn't take time anymore, it would be instantaneous. Sharing thoughts, feelings, even memories. Direct, from one brain to another. The line between what's your thought and what's coming from outside, gone.
So our brains would be working on a whole new level, a level we can't even really fathom right now. I'm starting to see why this whole idea of accelerating change is so central to Kurzweil's thinking. It's not just about what's changing, but the increasingly rapid speed at which it's all happening. It makes you wonder, though, is there a point where it just becomes too much?
That's where the singularity comes in.
Hmm.
And it's not just a cool sci-fi name. Kurzweil uses singularity to describe this point in time where technology is advancing so fast that predicting what happens after becomes impossible. Like imagine trying to describe a smartphone to someone living back when all they had were telegrams.
I can't even.
It's that level of change, but on steroids.
Okay, the singularity, the ultimate unknown. But it
Yeah.
sounds like Kurzweil sees it as more than just a technological event, though, right? Like, this
Yeah.
is the point where humanity itself is transformed.
Right on. And you know what one of the biggest, most transformative parts of his vision is? Radical life extension.
We're talking living longer, healthier lives. Sign me up. But is he really saying we could become, like, immortal?
He calls it longevity escape velocity, the point where medical technology is advancing faster than we age. Basically, the idea is if we can fix the things that make our bodies break down, we could keep extending our lifespans forever.
Okay, whoa. Now that's a lot to unpack. I mean, imagine the possibilities, but the challenges too, right? Relationships, careers, our sense of purpose. It would be a whole new ballgame.
Absolutely. And Kurzweil gets that. He talks about the potential downsides to boredom, overpopulation, maybe even some serious existential dread. But he also sees amazing opportunities, more time to learn, to create, to experience everything life has to offer.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it all. Nanobots in our brains, living for hundreds of years. It does sound pretty unbelievable, right?
It does, but that's the thing with Kurzweil. He backs up these crazy predictions with, like, hard science,
Yeah.
actual trends he's observing. He
Mhm.
might be a little out there, sure, but he's not making this stuff up.
That's what's so fascinating and a bit unnerving about all of this. We've only scratched the surface here, though, haven't we? What about the real-world impacts? Jobs, economic equality? What happens to our sense of humanity when we're talking about all this?
Big questions. Maybe the biggest questions of the 21st century.
Mm-mm.
And you know what? Kurzweil doesn't shy away from those either. We got to dig into those because they're unavoidable.
I mean, this is all pretty mind-blowing stuff, but let's be real for a minute. Nanobots, singularity, living to 200. What does it mean for the average person just trying to get by?
You're hitting on something really important. It can't just be about cool tech, right? Kurzweil knows that. He actually talks a lot about the potential downsides, too. Can't ignore those.
Like what? What are we talking about here?
Well, jobs, for one. Even now, AI is changing things. Automation. What happens when these AI can do, well, any job? Better, faster, cheaper.
It's like that example Kurzweil uses, the Luddites, those workers who smashed up the machines back in the day.
Right. They were scared of being replaced. And who could blame them?
Happening again, but on a way bigger scale.
Exactly. And with AI getting smarter exponentially, it's not just factory jobs anymore. It's the white-collar stuff, too, even creative work.
So what do we do if there aren't enough jobs to go around? How do we even rethink that whole system?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Kurzweil talks about things like universal basic income. Everyone gets a paycheck, even if their job is obsolete.
Interesting. So instead of feeling change, it's about adapting, right? Finding new models that work for everyone.
Exactly. But it's not just about the economy. Ethics gets really complicated, too. Like, imagine this life extension stuff actually works. Who gets it? Only the rich can afford to live to 200.
Talk about widening the gap between the haves and have-nots. That's a scary thought.
It is. And it's not just longevity. What about this super intelligent AI? What if it starts designing even smarter AI? Kurzweil even talks about, the risk of AI getting out of control.
Okay, now we're getting into sci-fi movie territory. But seriously, how do we even plan for a future this unpredictable, with so much potential for good and bad?
That's the challenge, isn't it? Kurzweil says the key is being proactive. We have to think about these things now, not after it's too late. Open conversations, ethical guidelines, working together to make sure these technologies are used for good.
It's like we're standing at the edge of something completely new and we get to choose the direction.
In a way, yeah. And the first step is simply awareness. Kurzweil might not have all the answers. No one does, really.
Yeah.
But he sure asks the right questions.
He does. And, maybe some of our listeners will be the ones to come up with the answers to shape this future we're all heading towards.
I'd like to think so. One thing's for sure. It's coming, ready or not.
Truer words have never been spoken. Well, folks, we've taken you on quite the journey today. Exponential growth, super AI, nanobots, the singularity. We've covered a lot. But more than just information, I hope this deep dive got you thinking, maybe challenged some assumptions, and hopefully left you with more questions than you started with.
Because ultimately, the future isn't something that just happens to us, right? It's something we create with the choices we make every day.
Love that. So as you go about your day, think about the possibilities we talked about, what excites you, what worries you, and most importantly, what role do you want to play in shaping what comes next? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.